Welcome to the Volpe Report podcast, the state's premier public affairs show dedicated to the topics that matter most to Pennsylvanians. I'm your host, Chuck Volpe. Join us now as we speak to this week's guest.
The following half-hour show is a paid political program and is not endorsed by this station, management, or staff.
The following program is brought to you by Excalibur Insurance Management Services.
We welcome this week's guest to the Volpe Report, Pennsylvania Treasurer Stacey Garrity, who was the two-term treasurer in Pennsylvania, having recently won re-election in 2024 by having more votes cast for her than any other candidate, which includes President Donald J. Trump. She is currently the Republican-endorsed as well as presumptive Republican nominee for governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which means she will oppose incumbent Governor Josh Shapiro in November. He is obviously running for re-election. Stacey's been a trailblazing businesswoman with a highly decorated military service career on the battlefields of Iraq. She is uniquely qualified to run for governor. Her story begins in rural Bradford County. After graduating from Sayre High School, Stacey earned a degree in finance and economics from Bloomsburg University and later received a certificate from Cornell University Business Management Institute. While serving in the United States Army Reserve, Stacey also worked as a cost accountant at Global Tungsten and Power Corporation, a global supplier of refractory powders, and worked her way up to becoming the first of two female vice presidents of the company. Back to her military service. Her service in the Army Reserve brought her to national attention amid scandals about prisoner abuse at other facilities. The national media highlighted her stellar performance as one of the officers in charge of the internment camp for enemy combatants in Iraq. Iraqis dubbed her the Angel of the Desert when her service at Camp Bucca in southern Iraq resulted in a perfect record. Stacey kept the camp secure and American troops safe without a single complaint of abuse from Iraqi prisoners interred there. She served in a remarkable 3 deployments, and they are for America in 1991 in Operation Desert Storm, in 2003 in Operation Iraqi Freedom, as well as in 2008 in Operation Enduring Freedom. Stacey was awarded the Bronze Star twice for exceptional service and duty and received the Legion of Merit before retiring from Army Reserve with the rank of full bird colonel. On tap for today's discussion will be the governor's budget address and the $5+ billion increase to Pennsylvania's budget over last year's budget, which you'll remember took almost till the end of the year to finally get passed, even though there was a deadline of June 30th, which means in a budget that was finally passed a couple of short months ago, in only 2 months, the Governor Shapiro is asking for an increase of over $5 billion in just 2 months since we passed the last one. We'll be talking about all those items on today's show.
This is the Volpe Report, a weekly news and political interview show examining the latest local, state, and national issues with Chuck Volpe. Insightful, informative, controversial. The area's premier political talk show, the Volpe Report.
Madam Treasurer, welcome to the Volpe Report.
It's great to be on with you, Chuck.
Well, the last time I was with you on the Volpe Report, it was you were in a gown, looking beautiful, at the Pennsylvania Society dinner, back at the Waldorf after 7 years. It moved to the Hilton Midtown, and it was a wonderful evening. And the reason I bring that up isn't just on a lark. I heard and then actually saw the Shapiro campaign took an excerpt of that to attack you on social media. I don't know if you saw it. I did see it. Someone showed me. They were attacking you for, quote, disparaging Pennsylvania as, a mid-tier state, which was taken out of context. What you said was because of Josh Shapiro, and we were 38th in this and 37th in that. Obviously, the Shapiro campaign took that excerpt from the Pennsylvania Society dinner. So that's why I mentioned it. So I guess that's what we're officially, battle has been joined. Correct, Stacey?
Well, that's correct. And you know what? They get very upset every time I say that Pennsylvania is mediocre because the truth hurts. And honestly, I think I'm being kind, Chuck. I think it's mediocre at best when we do rank 38th economically, 39th in education, 41st overall, which is awful. We're C minus in infrastructure. We have 3,000 deficient bridges, and 70% of our eighth graders can't read at grade level.
Well, that's an important segue because obviously the governor just gave his budget address. And
Yes.
he has earmarked, if I want to make sure I get the right, $565 million for public education. So we seem to keep throwing more and more and more money down this black hole without tangible results. And I know I have a lot of friends, and I know you support, I know the Commonwealth Foundation supports, and many others, a voucher program to allow talented kids from poor neighborhoods, below the median income neighborhoods, with not getting performance from their public school to be able to opt out and go to a place so they can lift themselves up and break the cycle of poverty and all that. And you would think that would be something that would be supported with those kind of awful numbers, and it's not. So your comment.
No, it's not. And I have to tell you, I was at the budget address and he stood there and said that Pennsylvania ranks in the top 10 in education. So, of course, I'm sitting there thinking, yes, we are number ninth in spending per student. But in results, we rank 39th. Oh my goodness. So, this is the deal. We have to stop failing up. So, if your child can't read in the third grade, then they need to repeat. If they can't do math and read at grade level in the eighth grade, then they should not go to high school. And as far as yes, I'm definitely school choice because I think parents, not bureaucrats, know what's best for their kids. And this is a lifeline for kids and parents.
Agreed. On that subject, I'm going to just say approximately, because it may have changed since I last looked at it, but somewhere, Stacey, in the vicinity of 40% of public school budgets are for their pension contribution. The pension contribution, which goes directly to the teachers through the teachers' union, a favorite, obviously, of the Democrats and of progressives. So when they say they're putting all this money, to your point, into education, a big chunk of the money they're putting into that education isn't getting to the students. It's getting to the pension plan for the teachers that have the best pension plan in the history of the world, for the record. But go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of administrative functions. I think there's so much opportunity to combine some of that back office work that's done. But you're right, the money is not going to the kids. And I don't know why we keep throwing more and more money every single year. I think we're spending over $1 billion more now on K through 12 education than when Shapiro took office, and our results don't change. So obviously, we need to do something different.
Yeah. And what bothers me about this whole cycle of doom, I call it? You've read about a lot at the national level that the president has to deal with about these organizations that get taken care of by their Democratic constituencies. And they, in turn, funnel the money back to presidential, to Senate, to governor campaigns. So you know who one of the biggest contributors to Josh Shapiro is? The teachers' unions. So he allocates like 2/3 of $1 billion more than we're already spending to get no good qualitative return, since we rank 2/3 of our eighth graders can't read at grade level, and yet they're funding the money to beat you and the Republican nominee for governor. You see how that works? I don't know what that has to do with a kid's education, so maybe you can illuminate that for me.
Well, exactly. So we should always do what's best for our kiddos. And Josh Shapiro, we've talked about this. He's held not one, not two, but three positions on school choice. He was 40, was against it, and now he can't do anything because he has a divided legislature. And, like I said, parents, not bureaucrats, should be in charge of what's best for their kids. And when you look at these kids in the bottom 15% of, poor performing schools, this would be a lifeline for them, one that they need now.
Agreed. So let's turn our attention. That's on me. I jumped to a line item in the budget address an issue. Now let's look at the whole thing as a whole. It went up $5.3 billion. It's up to 53 and change billion is what that budget now is. A significant increase, as I said, between $5 and $6 billion increase. And there's no tax raises in it, which they're proudly proclaiming, without raising taxes. So the way I look at it, until I read the fine print, Stacey, is that therefore you must have cut spending. Well, they didn't cut spending at all. As I just said, education's up 2/3 of $1 billion by itself. So the money is coming 2/3 to maybe even 70% of that money to plug the hole in the budget, and the increase is coming from the rainy day fund, which is going to go from 6 or so 7 billion in surplus. It'll be knocked $4 billion of it. 4.6 billion of that hole is coming from the rainy day fund, which means we don't even have one more year left, and it's all gone. But go ahead, your take on that.
It is all gone. So this budget year that we're in now passed a budget for $50.1 billion, basically wiped through the entire surplus, and then said, oh, we passed a balanced budget. Well, guess what? That's not my definition of a balanced budget. So we're spending, in 3 years since Shapiro's been in office, $9 billion more than when he first came in. And that's a 25% increase, and it's fiscally irresponsible and it's unsustainable. And so the budget address, the $53.3 billion, yes, we blow through $4.6 billion of the rainy day fund. And that's if you count the $1 billion of revenue that we don't have yet, and that's on recreational marijuana and games of skill. So if we don't have that, it'll be closer to $6 billion. And again, blowing through the rainy day fund, which you should never, ever use a rainy day fund to plug a budget hole. When I first took office, we had enough money in the rainy day fund to run the Commonwealth for less than 48 hours. And now we're at about 15%, which is where we should be. And again, it's just fiscally irresponsible. And just like we expect families to live within their means, the state should be doing the same thing. Because you're talking $53.3 billion. We only brought in revenues a little over $46 billion this past year.
Well, you're, in terms of qualifications, which, of course, my audience has heard from me as you've been on the show before, we're going to remind them. But probably the most important one is, again, you're the Pennsylvania State Treasurer in your second term. So you are duly elected in the representative of the people. So you would have a certain insight into the financial affairs of Pennsylvania that no other candidates would really have, because you know exactly to the penny how much money goes out, how much money comes in. And to your point, we're outspending. Now, I come from the business world, Stacey, and the business world is you only get. Oh, you too. I know your military background, but yeah, business as well. Extensive, 30 years, right, in the military?
Correct.
Yeah. So you've served our country. So again, thank you for your service. But having said that, the way I look at it is that's a path to bankruptcy. You can't keep spending more than you're taking in, or as Warren Buffett famously said, and I believe it was he that gave this quote, he said, bankruptcy happens very slowly and then all at once is how you go bankrupt. And that's the reality for governments too. And then that happens in the form of a crushing tax hike that eventually has to come. Because unlike the federal government that can live with deficit spending and not balance their budget, constitutionally, every state has to balance their budget, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And unfortunately, we were flush with so much money from the Biden era COVID days that they kept, we've run a deficit ever since I've been the treasurer, since 21. And so they've been using that surplus of the COVID money to plug the budget hole, plug the budget hole, plug the budget hole. Now we're into the rainy day fund, and, the gig's up.
Right. No question. Yeah, I remember a similar scenario. Tom Corbett, as governor, came on this show. I'm going back 12 years or so, 2014, when he was running for re-election. And I remember one of the issues that they pointed out, and they beat him over the head with it, that he had to make so much cuts to the tune of almost $1 billion in education. What they forgot to tell everybody is the reason he had to do that is because under the administration of Ed Rendell, before him, the Democratic governor, Stacey, they had taken money that came. Remember of course, we all remember the economic crisis of 2007, 2008. The bubble burst. Everything was going, Goldman Sachs, everything, too big to fail companies. The government bailed out a lot, and the states were devastated as well. And a lot of money came in like COVID, one-time money from the federal government. Billions came in. Well, naturally, this is the same scenario now for Governor Shapiro. Back then, it was Governor Rendell took this money and added all these new administrative functions, gave all this money to education, using that, not rainy day fund money. This was straight government money, but it's kind of rainy day fund money. The same principle. So what Tom Corbett said when I took office, he said that money had been spent and I had $1 billion hole in my budget to fill because the money wasn't there, and he had to raise taxes. And what did the Democrats do? They turn around, that was in 2010. In 2014, they beat him bloody. Look what he did. A Republican raised taxes. Look at the cuts to education. He didn't cut education. It's the governor plugged money in that Rendell, the Democrat. Well, we're seeing a similar scenario. I just want to put that on your radar for how this works. That bill will come due.
Oh, it will. And it's going to be on the backs of taxpayers unless we take this opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity, I'll say, to turn our state around. And then we can unleash, our natural gas. It's liquid gold right under our feet. That is the envy of the entire world, which would create billions of dollars in economic opportunity and tens of thousands of jobs.
And that would actually fund the budget.
It would. Imagine that.
Imagine that. Well, Stacey, we're going to take a quick break for just a commercial break that we take in the middle of every show. So we'll be right back.
There are more places you can see the Volpe Report. Watch every Sunday morning at 10:30 on Fox 56 or watch on YouTube at the Volpe Report. More ways to watch. Still the same premier political talk show dedicated to the topics that matter most to Pennsylvanians.
Okay, I'd like to stay on the budget for a second longer. You talked about unleashing our energy that's in our soil. Critical for our country, critical for our national defense, critical for energy production to keep taxes low for Pennsylvanians as utility bills and electricity keeps going up. We know that Pennsylvania, to compete with Ohio, for example, with data centers that are coming to support AI, which is where the world is going. You don't have to like AI, but you have to have it because our enemies have it. And we're going to need that to compete. So that's a big thing. For example, real quick, Ohio, again, numbers could change. It's a month or two since I heard this, but somewhere in the vicinity of between 350 and 400 data centers in Ohio. Do you know how many we have in Pennsylvania right now? I'll save you wondering. About like 60?
I think we might have 88, but it's a low number.
I'll defer. You're the candidate for governor. You would have a staff that looks that stuff up. It's still only a quarter of what Ohio has. We compete for people. Our kids come out of colleges looking for jobs in the tech sector, maybe the single biggest booming sector, of course, that's in our immediate future. And if we don't have the energy in the data centers, they're going to Ohio for their jobs. We're going to lose our Pennsylvania kids to Ohio and New York and New Jersey and everywhere else. So Maryland. So what are your thoughts on that? Back to energy production, because the thing that solves all those problems is to untap our energy. What are your plans to do that?
Right. So we have to make Pennsylvania a business-friendly state. And we have to get rid of the red tape, the bureaucracy. We are the 14th highest regulated state in the nation, which is ridiculous. And so, when there's uncertainty, they don't want to invest here. And so we've lost billions and billions of dollars. And yes, Ohio, they are kicking our butts. We have the best universities here. We educate our kids and then they leave, and they don't have to go to Texas or Florida to find opportunities. They can go right over to Ohio, even West Virginia, Maryland, like you said. And so, I go to all 67 counties every single year. I talk to parents and grandparents, families in all four corners of the state, and they all say the same thing. They want opportunities for their kids, their grandkids, and they want those opportunities to happen right here in Pennsylvania. And so speaking of data centers, I know everybody's worried about their electricity rates. But you know what? Have them bring their own power source, their own water source. people don't realize how blessed we are to have so much clean water here in Pennsylvania. And you know what? If we would remove the red tape of permitting, then I think that they would be willing to, to have some kind of impact fee to the communities. And then they would have skin in the game with our communities. And of course, we also have to have community buy-in. We can't jam it down, the throats of people. And I don't think we have to if we do it the right way.
Well, one of the governors that really, I think, the first time I heard about the oceans of natural gas we had under our soil was the governorship of Tom Corbett. And he pushed hard for that, and in more fracking in more places. And one of the things you triggered in my memory, one of the ways that he made it palatable to get done was impact fees. And we look back now on how it's been a godsend for communities. The monies they're getting based on the percentages and the tonnage of natural gas coming out has been put into improving infrastructure, building new schools, all kinds of wonderful stuff. So you specifically referenced an impact fee that would be connected to data centers in your administration.
Yes, and I think if we accelerated permitting and made it, if we were more business friendly, I think they would be happy to have some skin in the game and help out the communities.
Sure. Now let's turn our attention to another, again, back into the budget thing. One of the, to me, it's kind of a misrepresentation that if we tax games of skill, if we legalize recreational marijuana and do a few of those things, close the Delaware loophole, that somehow that extra revenue we need to do to help make up the gap. My view of that, and I want your comment, is that only covers about a quarter of the deficit that we're looking at, which is plugged in by the rainy day fund to backfill the rest of it. Your thoughts on that issue, because he's pushing that, obviously. He did so in his address.
Right. Well, he pushed it last year as well. And you're exactly correct. First of all, the numbers he have in there are overinflated, and they don't even come close to plugging the budget hole. So you talk about legalizing marijuana. He has some huge number in there. I called my Ohio treasurer friend and asked. They just legalized marijuana a couple years ago, and they bring in about 300 million a year. That's it, and they have roughly the same size population that we do. And then when you talk about games of skill, sure, maybe they should be regulated, but 52%. I mean, these these people, I mean, they're in all our local convenience stores, our VFWs, our Legions, and we want to make sure we don't hurt those small businesses. So I don't think they have any issue being regulated, but 52% is probably not the correct number, because I can tell you the people that I see playing these games of skill are not going to go 2 hours to the casino.
Right, of course. Well, I heard a long time ago, again, 15 whatever years ago now, or even more now, when we allowed games of skill, games of chance. And now we have Pennsylvania casinos, which we never had before. You used to have to go to Atlantic City or Las Vegas. And in fact, that specific thing helped kill Atlantic City in some of the places that had the gaming, because they had an exclusivity to it. And now people aren't getting in a bus anymore to drive 5 hours to get to AC when they could drive 20 minutes to Mohegan Sun up in this neck of the woods and everywhere else in between. So, but what I remember about that, Stacey, is they projected a panacea. All of our budget problems are going to go away once, because we're going to tax the revenue on the gaming industry and they're going to fill this big hole. It didn't come close. It didn't. And that was for a big issue, not just games of skill. This is which is a much smaller level penetration. We're talking about casinos open up everywhere in Pennsylvania. And so that, to me, to your point, that doesn't, to me, come close. Neither does legalizing marijuana come close. You have structural deficits that will come back to haunt you. But one final point, and I'd like your comment on, I don't know what the numbers are, but people have told me that I do know. I have a lot of friends in the state police. Apparently, the governor has a more expensive security detail than any other governor, and it's like exploded the cost of Pennsylvania. I didn't see any line item for that in his budget address, but are you familiar with that, what he's done with his security detail?
I am not necessarily familiar with that, but I can tell you what he's done with his communication staff.
Okay.
And that he's spending about $15 million a year on, and that's to make TikTok videos. He has
run for
over
president.
twice. Yes, exactly. He has over twice the number that Tom Wolf had.
Wow.
And I would tell you that right now he's in a dispute with his neighbors, and he had the PSP keeping the neighbors off the property line. So they're fighting over property. And yes, and they're also trying to stick taxpayers with upgrades to his personal residence. Not talking about the governor's residence, personal.
Yeah. Well, your staff should look into that. I heard it's a ridiculous sum of money. Like that his security detail is, Stacey, maybe tripled to the point where it's, and as I said, there's sources in the state police that have told me that to look at that. So I'll pass that along. You may want to take a look at that. It's
I will.
ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
I mean, Chuck, he has 3,000 more state employees since he took office than Tom Wolf.
Wow.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, and Wolf kind of broke the bank, with his progressive agenda in regulation, which required state employees to fill all those things. Okay, let's now turn our attention to some of the other things you feel like in your campaign are big issues for you. Most of it's been my agenda asking you questions. Your kind of wish list as far as, like, as Donald Trump said, the first day in office, they're going to be this executive order, I'm going to do this and this. What would be your immediate impact if you become governor of Pennsylvania?
Right. So the immediate thing is obviously taking steps to unleash our energy responsibly. And then rolling back, we have a lot of subsidies for alternative energy. So ratepayers are paying $700 million a year for alternative energy. So we've dumped billions and billions of dollars into wind and solar, and yet the percentage is only gone from 2 to 4%. And then in Josh Shapiro's lightning plan, he has a replacement for RGGI, Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is cap and trade. So there's another cap and trade in there. And then they take that alternative energy tax and they increase it 335%. And you know what? That makes your electricity go up. And Pennsylvania's just cannot afford it. Also, education, like I said, school choice. I'm all for empowering parents to make the best decisions for their kiddos, as well as I want to make sure that we have two big priorities with the revenues that we get in, and that's to make sure our seniors can stay in the homes that they, spent their whole life in, and make sure that our young adults can afford to buy their first home. So that's just a few of the items.
Well, believe it or not, Stacey, we blew through a half an hour.
We did?
Yeah, can you imagine? Yeah, we
Like
did.
that.
Yeah. So it was a wonderful getting reconnected. I haven't seen you obviously since the Pennsylvania dinner. I look forward to when I'm getting real old now, Stacey, and my old bones don't handle the cold weather so well. So I escaped to Florida for longer periods of time. But I'll be back in the middle of March. I do look forward to seeing you at Dan's event for you, and
Thank you.
we'll keep you coming back here to keep telling Northeast and Central Pennsylvania about your campaign and about what they should be considering as voters. And that's my job to do that, and it'll get done.
I appreciate it and enjoy the warm weather.
Thanks, Stacey. Godspeed.
See you, Chuck.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Volpe Report podcast. Be sure to visit our YouTube and Facebook pages for upcoming episodes. You can catch up on the Volpe Report podcast on your favorite podcast provider.